Sweet. Let's remember our microphones and what have you. And we'll go ahead and call to order the Transportation Authority of Calhoun County, January 28th, 2025 meeting. And is that the second one of the year?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. So the Happy New Year stuff is I'm past that threshold, just making sure I don't offend anybody. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Madam Secretary, if you would help us with a roll call, please.
Yes, Tom Turkowitz.
Here.
Paul Watson. Eric Stewart.
Present.
Vivian Davis. Present. Amy Evans.
Here.
Janisha Morris. And staff, we have Mallory Avis, Matthew McKee, Doug Farrell, no. And shall we include?
Nope, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. Hey, Doc, how you doing? If we could take a look at the current agenda, are there any changes or what have you? I'll seek a motion for approval. Is anybody?
So approved, removed.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to write your thing here.
Got a motion for the approval of the agenda. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Evans and supported by Ms. Davis. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Perfect. We'll move on to approval of the January 14th, 2025 minutes. That's the Happy New Year meeting.
So
Okay, it's been moved. Is there any support?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and supported by the same vote. In a different order though. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Perfect. We'll go ahead and move right into public comments. Are there any public comments? Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and.
Hello, my name is Jeff Franklin. I'm the Executive Director of the Battle Creek Area Transportation Study. I'm speaking to agenda items. I noticed that on 9H, TACC Representative Appointment to BCAT's Policy Committee. I failed to be here 2 weeks ago when you talked about BCAT's and TACC's potential coordination efforts with each other.
Yes.
So I am here to remedy that situation and to pay attention to the TACC more forthright going forward. First of all, Battle Creek Area Transportation Study is a metropolitan planning organization. What that is it's a federally mandated organization, committee of governments, if you will, that based on federal law stemming all the way back to 1962, the first time MPOs were mentioned in federal law and been upheld since then, are required to form if an urbanized area, as defined by the U.S. Census, exceeds 50,000 population. A MPO is required to form based on its appointed officials within the boundaries and municipalities that are affected, as well as all of its transportation officials, including state and federal levels, to discuss finite federal resources and how to best spend those federal dollars within that particular affected MPO planning area. The feds wanted a mechanism to make sure that federal dollars were best spent within an urbanized area. These are transportation planning officials and elected officials that discuss these scarce resources and determine which projects are best able to be funded or wisest able to be funded. The MPO must do this based on a 3C process that's comprehensive, cooperative, and continuing. Comprehensive means that we've invited everybody to the table that has a transportation planning stakeholder group, including all those local elected officials, transportation officials at the local level, state level, and the federal level, and the public, to be able to have this discussion. Cooperation, we're required to create a forum that proves to be cooperative amongst these various groups that might have designs on this scarce federal funding and where it ought to go. And continuing, we have to continue to do this iteration over and over and over again. BCATS has been in existence since 1984. So we just celebrated 50 years this last year. Celebrated 50 years with our longtime executive director of 35 plus years retiring and choosing me to be her successor. So another 50 years, let's go. But anyhow, we are given the ability to form by the Intermunicipality Committee Act of the state law that allows us to be able to collect municipal representatives, form an intermunicipality committee, and be able to interact with the public as if we are our own quasi-government agency. So BCATS has the authority to be able to take federal grants and state grants and pass those out to its members. And its members dictate or pick how those grants are appropriated or used. Anyway, that's probably enough for this particular agenda item. I look forward to discussing it underneath the unfinished business H and at public comment later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jeff, I appreciate you coming to this forum. I know we were absent from what was the meeting last week? And part of what we want to talk about today is formalizing how we have a rotation plan of who may be there or what have you, given that our current technical assistance representation does not necessarily reflect, or it could conflict with a direction that we may go or what have you currently. So we'll talk about that, and I appreciate you coming and giving us that context, and welcome in terms of having that succession plan in place. Yeah, I'll definitely support another 50 years of stable leadership in any capacity. So it's good. We appreciate you being here. Any questions for Jeff or what have you, given his capacity? I have so many questions about the current federal mandates, and I'm not sure how much you know based on information in the past 24 hours. So, yeah.
Very good. Touch on it.
Yeah, good. We'll move on. Any other public comment? Okay. A consent agenda. Any changes? We want to pull anything off or what have you? Okay, great. So we'll move right into finance and budget report.
I thought that what would be most helpful to know is that in December, we received a total of $76,303.94 from 2 of our 4 communities. And then so far in January, I know we have another payment coming this week, but so far in January, we've collected or received $1,959,080.76. So altogether so far, $35,384.70 has come to tax payments. And this morning I received a schedule showing that by March 14th of 2025, at least 90% of collections on hand as of February 28th, 2025 must be distributed to any of the tax assessing units, municipalities. And final distribution to all units must be made no later than April 1st, 2025. We'll have the funds coming in for a little bit longer to do this good work.
Good, thank you. The benefit there is that the pass-through is working well based on how the accounts are set up and things of that nature, and it's off to a good start. So, is that the end of you get?
Yeah.
Wait, before we move on, any questions on that piece? That was a hard stop.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
It's the first time through, we probably don't have a notion of it. So do we know what percentage of, let's say we're supposed to get 100? Have we received so far 70? Do we have any marker like that right now?
Based on the presentations that we were doing, I believe we said there was an approximate $5 million gap, and that's what this. And so if we've collected 2 million so far, and again, we'll have another payment coming in Thursday, is my understanding. So we could be, what is that, like 40% or something?
Yeah, I was just curious because I know the taxable values change every single year. So those numbers were based, I think, on like a year ago or 2 years ago.
I believe they used 2023.
Okay, so it was 1 year ago. And I know the taxes have not changed, but it does give us a pretty good ballpark. I was just curious if you had if the individuals who were sent to you were sent to you with a sort of, hey, this is this much of this much. So if they're not, that's fine. I'm just kind of curious.
When they send the backup, it shows, well, at least 3 of the 4, I've noticed that it shows that it's the amounts paid are collected between this date and this date. Because as this report says that I got this morning, that I just read about the deadlines, it says that they have to be paid by the 15th and the 1st. Or that's when they're collected through, and they have to be paid after that, 10 days after that. So the ones we got in December were from December 1st through December 15th. And then the ones earlier this month were December 16th through the 31st.
No, perfect. Thanks. I was just kind of curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad that you got to see it, that our point that the pass through is working and it seems to be pretty.
Yeah, 3 of the 4 were able to immediately do ACH deposits. One of them had to send a check first to confirm that the confirmation was correct, but then they and so that's working smoothly too. You're welcome.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll talk about the insurance when we get to that later.
Okay. Any other updates or?
We've been paying the invoices and the one for our consultants went in the mail on the, I guess, yesterday.
Yeah.
I was trying to think what day of the week this is.
And then just for a matter of record, we won't go through this in massive detail. We'll submit for our notes, your budget report of, there's good detail of what's been paid and what's come in and what have you. So a good summary of that. So we'll go ahead and enter that in as part of the minutes and go forth. Any finance related, acting treasurer related questions? Nope. Hearing none, let's move on in the agenda. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Public hearings and subsequent board action. Anything there? Okay. Moving right into unfinished business. Procurement procedures manual ratification. Who wants to give an update on that?
I think you are looking at a different agenda than, but that's okay.
What did your A say?
TACC purchasing policy adoption, that's what's in the folder that's sitting.
Oh, which, yeah,
Yeah, just a little bit.
which is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, well, one is for current use, and that's what A is on the
I got it.
agenda in the packet, and then B is for future use. So A is the simple 2-page purchasing policy. And then B is the draft procurement purchasing manual for future use, which we've received help from our consultants, Peter and Clark. And Peter's here with us today.
Great. So just to give a little context, one thing that we were charged with at fall kind of subcommittee was to come up with some language that would allow purchases from this body and give us the authority in terms of method, dollar amounts, and things of that nature. A lot of work's been done around that, but it's complicated. We are building an organization and putting a manual together as we go. So since the millage has passed and what have you, an incredible amount of work has gone into doing 2 things: building what we need right now and giving ourselves the authority to act in a responsible way that meets federal guidelines, and kind of skate to where the puck is going for the future until we receive our, help me out, designated recipient status. Got a lot of things happening. And so we know that the goal for that is kind of an October timeline. So an entire manual for an organization that doesn't exist today is being developed in lieu of understanding that in the future, we would have some semblance of staff and departments and things of that nature. But for right now, there are things that we need for this body, for this authority, such as legal representation, accounting, marketing, general outreach stuff and things of that nature that may be on a procurement scale that we need to make sure we do in the right manner that skates to meeting those federal requirements in some form or fashion. So I tried to bake that down into the simplest form possible. That's how I operate. So we'll move there. So basically what we have is before us today is a draft of two things. The purchasing policy that would allow us to go ahead and execute some of those things that I just described. And then the beginning of a draft manual, if you will, that our consultant friends have been working on, which will be ratified in the future. But I want to stress that it's a draft at this point as we put the mechanics together. And it is the draft that we've reviewed up to date is a very robust, long manual that needs to be in detail and thought out. Not that the first revision will be the last, but it needs time and attention. So as we move forward in the next several months between now and October, you'll get little chunks of that will be completed, ratified, inserted, and what have you in the right manner. And hopefully it makes sense based on receiving that status in the future and maybe having assets, people, what have you, that formalize a Ride Calhoun TACC organization. Does that make sense? Did I set that up properly?
Yeah.
Consultants, Peter, were you okay with that?
Yes, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Do we want to go through the highlights of the purchasing policy and then we can formalize a vote to adopt?
Would you like me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since you're here. I mean, Peter's here, but he's not here.
Yeah, so the purchasing policy, the micro purchases are for goods valued at 10,000 or less for federally funded procurements, and they may be purchased without obtaining competitive quotations. Small purchases are for an acquisition of supplies, services, and construction in the amount of $49,999.99 or less, and they must follow small purchase procedures, which are 3 written quotations that the board would request from those vendors for those needs. Petty cash is $25 or under. And then the last item listed on here is a blanket purchase agreement, which is a simplified method of filling anticipated repetitive needs for supplies or services by establishing accounts with qualified suppliers. So there's also formal purchases with an estimated value of 50,000 or more, and they must be treated as formal purchases per the Michigan Revised Code and typically require the use of competitive bidding or competitive negotiation procedures. Purchases over 100,000 must be approved by this board. And price reasonableness of a proposed price may be determined by comparison of the proposed price with prices found reasonable on recent previous purchases, current price lists, catalogs, advertisements, similar items in a related industry and industry indices.
Great. Did we, I'll ask our technical folk, did we pretty much hit the highlights that were important? Plus there's and this, if adopted, this will be part of our minutes too and be published and what have you and kind of go from there. Any questions about that policy? I know that the subcommittee of that policy was not in order of importance. I was on that committee, Amy and Tom, along with the consultants and our technical people from Battle Creek City Transit. So we did a lot of that work, and it was a very robust discussion around this piece and what have you to put a simple policy in place that didn't go overboard. So any questions, comments?
Maybe I should read the introduction. The Transportation Authority of Calhoun County Purchasing Policy prescribes procedures for the purchase of supplies, equipment, and services according to the estimated cost of procurement prior to tax designated recipient status and staff hiring, including an executive director. The board of directors will procure essential needs proceeding under FTA guidelines. FTA being the Federal Transit Authority Administration. Thank you.
Yeah. So is there any, I think that piece that you just read can be formalized in terms of a motion and, because that's the purpose, and use that for adoption purposes. Any other questions, observations before I call?
Also move.
Okay, Tom Tarkowitz has moved adoption. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the purchasing policy, as indicated in revision 1, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Perfect. We'll go ahead and put, those things in place and, continue that subcommittee meeting, for a couple of those things to get us started. So, what I'll move on to is the draft procurement, the draft manual, and what have you. I don't know if we're ready to adopt since it's revisions and what have you, going forward. But the manual is in place and there's a lot of technical jargon that, we have to do to meet federal requirements and things of that nature. I think for information purposes, we need to let the general public know that we're putting policies and procedures in place for the Transportation Authority of Calhoun County, with under the pretense, as I said before, ahead of our designated recipient status. So in October, we're ready to rock and receive that, interact with federal dollars and what have you. It's important to note, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mallory, our current grants, administration, things of that nature are continuing to work through Battle Creek City Transit and what have you. And we're meeting with the city of Battle Creek and other municipalities to make sure that that's streamlined with letters of intent, understanding, and what have you for a smooth transition of not just services, but assets and other items based on that designated recipient status. Man, I'm becoming a transportation nerd. I'm loving it. It feels good, Jeff. Okay. I don't know what that means, but but having said that, it's a lot of moving parts. It's I don't mean to oversimplify it, but it is very much complicated, and we want to take our time at making sure we meet federal requirements. So I don't want to adopt anything per se. What I want to do is provide that for informational purposes, and as we bring more like purchasing policies and things of that nature that we'll need to activate, we'll do that just like we did the purchasing piece and then move that into practice. Does that make sense? Are we good with that?
Would you want us to accept this as a draft? I guess I looked at Peter. We're not adopting it, but we will at least accept it as the draft, as a document. Again, from those that were not on the committee, this is Akron, Ohio's policy. And if you look at it online on the, there's a lot of changes that Amy did to pack it. We'll get to come up with a name.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of finance directors and executive directors and board rather than the city. So that's where this was. But I guess, is that what we should be doing, is accepting the.
Yeah, Peter.
All right, so I think you should accept it as a draft so that for transparency reasons, that this is the direction you're heading in. It's draft because things will be amended as the authority is being put together and you know what positions you have in place and how you're going to proceed. But this would be very important to the Federal Transit Administration to see that you've adopted a process that includes a draft manual that fully complies with FTA requirements. This will make it easier for you to be the designated recipient October 1st. So yes, I would encourage a motion to accept the draft. And then at some point, you'll probably adopt a manual around October.
Perfect. That's great. That clears all that up. So any other observations, or I'll accept a motion to accept that draft in progress and what have you.
I'll make a motion to approve said draft.
Okay. And
Second.
Receive said draft.
yeah, and if based on Peter, thank you, Peter, for that context. Based on Peter's context, we'll make sure we have that motion, have that language, because I like the way he explained that. So that's what you're actually moving, right? Based on Peter's observation, and you're seconding based on Peter's observation, just making sure we're all clear. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, the motion was by Dr. Watson, and the second was by Secretary Davis. Matt, thank you. I know you're sitting right there. I mean, you can, you know. But all those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Perfect. Let's move into our next agenda item. We talked about the procurement subcommittee. I don't think we need to, everybody good if I skip over that? Okay, silence is acceptance. FOIA documents, revisions, mailing, an email address. Who wanted to pick that up?
So on the January 14th agenda, we had to update our mailing address in the bylaws, but it was actually the TACC FOIA documents, which are the procedures and guidelines, questions and answers, and request forms. So I went in after the last meeting and added our mailing address, email address to the procedures and guidelines, added our email address to the questions and answers document, and the mailing address and email address to the request form. And I put them in red so they'd be obvious for you if you wanted to see what I did, the changes I made. So, so those have been made now. They were formally approved, those documents previously. So I don't know if I changed the adoption date. If, you know, I'm just sharing with you, that was the only changes that were made. I don't know if we need to readopt them today or how that works, but if so, I can change, I'll make if you say so, I'll change the red font to black and then change the date if that's needed.
Just mark it as amended. Rather than,
I think we have to have action on it.
No, I think we have. It's an actionable item if we made changes to it. So I just want to be consistent.
no, I mean, as a vote here, but then show it as amended.
Yeah. 100%. So yes, go ahead and make that motion and we'll handle discussion.
Okay, so I move that we approve the amended FOIA documents, the procedures and guidelines, questions and answers, and request forms with the added new mailing address and email address.
And the annotated changes that you described
Which, yep.
would be those things.
all
Okay.
those things, Yep.
All right. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Evans, Acting Treasurer Evans and Vice Chair Tarkowitz. Any other discussion? Okay, thank you for taking care of that detail work. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Perfect. We'll go ahead and make that so. New board member search discussion. I know that we'd had some activity on that and what have you. I've had some discussion and folks have been vacillating and what have you. In terms of time commitment and what have you, but I do have two folks that I've talked to that seem interested and that I'd like to push forward to fill that vacant county seat and suggest, I mean, I'm only suggesting these pieces to Assistant Administrator Farrell. Got that right. And kind of move forward. So my idea would be the first two people are very active. They've been active in the TACC campaign. They've demonstrated both connections to the senior community, the county, as well as were very active in being informative about what TAC is and what have you during the marketing campaign, if you will. A lot of our materials were distributed by these folks, and they have been doing nothing but talking about transportation. So it meets a variety of our requirements. That first individual is a kind of a community person. She has some links with Chuck and what have you, would be Kathy Antea, and very vocal in the community, one way or the other. I like that critical thinking and what have you, but she was very instrumental along with Chuck in terms of helping create an environment where transportation was a topic and important. So I'll leave that on the table if we're kind of in agreement with that. And then the second person is the current administrator and leader at the Cool Family Community Center associated with Battle Creek Community Foundation, who was equally instrumental, Maya Williams, who participates in grant pieces for the senior community with SMAC and understands transportation. She's one of the folks that submitted some of the material with her family member praising, seeing the change in the new bus system and things of that nature. So she has some on the ground experience and is very vocal in the community and the county relative to that. And either one of those folks would be a positive addition based on their experience. I know that I'll request some resume material. I'm not sure about Ms. Antea's background, but I know that Ms. Williams has some potential treasury background and has shown some interest in potentially playing a role in that finance piece, which would possibly release the acting treasurer's duties as she wishes. But she's doing a great job. So, but we'll see what we got. Any discussion about that? If I move those folks forward or what have you, friends of the program. I see a lot of nods and what have you. So, yeah. I want to give them options to choose from.
They only can choose one.
They can only choose one. Yeah, and we'll kind of go from there. Any other nominations or suggestions you want me to push towards Doug? Any feelings about that other than what I've described? Okay, we'll go ahead and see how that goes. I'll have that conversation with Doug and gather some information. I see some nods from the technical folks, and we'll move there. All right.
Both individuals live in Calhoun County.
Yes, sir. Okay. Yep. I don't know where Miss Antea lives, but I assume since she has been seen in Calhoun County so much, that's where she lives. So we'll go from there. All right. Moving on into, I would invite Ms. Avis to the piece and talk about the TAC Planning Committee report.
So I discussed last time that planning committee is our smaller group that includes Tom, Janasia, and Eric. And that group is essentially responsible for getting to the letter of intent that Eric mentioned before, that kind of outlines that path forward for a smooth transition by October 1st. So we are giving the TAC a minute to obtain the legal counsel, labor attorneys, so that we can start the regular cadence of those meetings, understanding that the TAC needs somebody who can represent the TAC during labor negotiations, asset negotiations, and formalize agreements outside of what the consultants could establish. So that is still ongoing. Now that the purchasing policy is approved and the TAC can move forward with securing legal counsel, we can get those regularly scheduled meetings on the calendar with Marshall and with the city of Battle Creek. That is all I have.
Thank you.
This is just me. So that's the TAC Planning Committee. That's what we're calling it.
You want to call it
Something else? I mean, there's a whole lot of TAC committees and things of that nature, and it kind of gets confusing. Can it be since we're going to be getting letters of intent, things of that nature between municipalities or what have you, can we just add that verbiage to it, like the TAC Municipality Planning Committee, or something along those lines, so that I can tell the difference? You know, and then, and if I'm sitting here and it's hard for me to tell the difference, I can only imagine that the average taxpayer cross confused with all these plans and, what have, so we'll go ahead and, but that's a good use of our time and, making sure that that's part of the process. And then, oh, the BCATS representative piece. I know we talked about needing to be represented there and what have you, and how that may change in the future based on the designated status change and what have you. But as for right now, between now and maybe the end of the year, is there the way that I thought about cracking that nut was Dr. Watson, you going to all the BCATS meetings. Is there maybe we rotate through and then bring that information back to this body and what have you? So each of us would have a month that we would go to BCATS and be on the schedule. Is that I'm looking at the technical folks. Is that a thing, or we need a person?
I would defer to Jeff and let Jeff maybe outline the necessity for attendance and when.
I want to make sure Jeff, come on up, buddy, if you don't mind. Yeah. You said I could ask any questions.
Prepared for this question.
So you understand what I'm saying, because this is a volunteer thing. And,
You could do that. I think that it would be particularly interesting to see every member of the TACC board see what our BCATS meetings are like and how they're run, and network with the other elected officials that are responsible for the transportation planning system within the urbanized area. But it doesn't have to be that way. This is how I view that particular nut. We added the TACC to our policy committee bylaws. That's the decision-making body that FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, Federal Highway Administration, and the Michigan Department of Transportation recognizes the decision-making body for those federal and state resources is our policy committee. Our policy committee amended our bylaws a month ago to add the TACC because we saw that as a forthcoming member, that when you're the designated recipient, you'd be required to be a member, at least a member on paper to the MP organization. Whether or not you participate, that's a completely different ballpark. But we would love to see and encourage a participating member on our BCATS policy committee. But the way that I look at that particular nut is that right now we have Battle Creek Transit, City of Battle Creek Transit representation upon our board, regularly participating. They'll fold into the TACC. So if you look at that particular member as representing TACC's interests, and they actively are doing that up to this point, there's always a TACC update at the BCATS policy committee meetings. You are being represented. You are just now made official within our bylaws as a sort of a preemptive move. I wanted to be able to demonstrate on your behalf to Federal Transit Administration that the MPO checkbox for you is cleared. It's out of the way so that you can become the designated recipient on October 1st.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, don't leave yet. Because I have a variety of nuance that I just want to make sure we are clear and it's obvious based on my thought process. So a couple of things we have going that may be different. I don't know who your other members are. That may be different is we represent several different parts of the county. And so that my rotation piece would give presence at that meeting from this authority for different parts of the county, because it hits different. You get where I'm coming from? That's why we're all here. And at the same time, I would assume that it would demonstrate to the FTA that we're concerned about the entire county. We're doing our due diligence to understand all parts of that piece, and we're reporting back to this body. And does that make sense?
It does.
And it's just a little unique and different. I was in a meeting with our policy folks, and the consultants always remind me that, being the size of our authority, the difference in nuance in our authority is different than really any other in the state, the way that we're absorbing a lot of these actions. And I want to make sure that we have as many voices to the table representing those areas as possible versus me showing up, as a chair representing whatever, or how I came into this body. Does that
Yes,
But that works both ways for you.
it does. TAC being a recognized member of the BCATS policy committee fits into that goal. I can easily demonstrate to my state and federal partners the compliance of looking regional. So the BCATS planning area really only encompasses the cities of Springfield and Battle Creek in their entirety, as well as Bedford Charter Township, Penfield Charter Township, Emmett Charter Township, Leroy and Newton Townships.
Yep.
So it doesn't impact Marshall, the city of Marshall or the city of Albion. However, that could change depending on where that 50,000 plus population sets up and how the US Census identifies what an urbanized area of Battle Creek, the greater Battle Creek area looks like. Especially as the city of Marshall continues to, Marshall Township, city of Marshall continue as a glob, if you will, moving westward, Emmett Township moves eastward. Eventually, BCATS sometime in the next 10 to 20 years is going to be asked to include the city of Marshall and Marshall Township within its planning area anyway. So we're already looking out. One of our particular plans that BCATS are one of our particular things that we have to do, federally mandated things, is look out at least 20 years, a 20-year horizon, and have a long-range plan based on that. Recognizing a transportation authority of Calhoun County or something that's greater than just a city transit department or city transit departments was already something that we were doing, and is already something that's in our plans. We had to do that to demonstrate to FTA that we were thinking in that way. That's what the goal looked like. This coming to fruition is the meeting of that goal, and it's fantastic. But it also means that, you know, I don't want to step on your shoes, but I don't see TAC representation in our Battle Creek area, including Marshall and Albion, as a bad thing. If anything, if a Albion representative or Marshall representative attends our meetings and feels like, well, we're not in the BCATS planning area. I mean, not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but that's how you get there,
Yes.
by being present, by contributing and sharing the importance of why that area should be represented in a different way than it had been in the past. And that's what this body is called to do when we talk about representing the county. So no, I appreciate that. And I just want to make, as a matter of record, I think it's great that our technical folks and Battle Creek City Transit is sitting at the table, but I do want to make it clear, I don't see any conflict on the horizon, but if we hit a sticky point, we want to make sure that it's very clear where the input lies, if you will. And I will say that if and when when we participate in BCATS, we want to be an active member. And I'm not obligating us to any billing situation by this statement. I'm just saying that we want to have voice, and we want to make sure that BCATS understands, especially if you have a relationship with the FTA, where we're thinking we're going and the speed in which we're going and how we're doing it, so we can all skate to where the puck is going together.
Indeed.
Cool.
Yes, and thank you, because Albion, the outlining areas, often feels, left out, like we're the stepchildren of the greater Battle Creek area. So anytime the outlining areas can be included, that's a positive thing.
Yes, likewise. Calhoun County Road Department is a very active participating member, and they often feel like they're riding a side of a line because they have a rural process and this urban process. And how do they divide in their mind? They don't. I mean, we think regionally, and that includes Marshall and Albion.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. What we'll do is, as a next action item, do we agree with rotating that piece as a board? See a lot of head nods. What we'll do is we'll put that out, publish the dates, the BCAT dates, and take a look at our schedules and see who can be in attendance and what have you. Where is that meeting?
City of Springfield Council Chambers.
Been sitting here all this time and you knew that?
Yes.
Springfield rep? Yeah, come on. Okay, you just signed up for 2 meetings. Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say, if there's, a meeting where somebody else or, nobody else can attend and I can go, more than
Yeah, you can probably walk there from your house.
I probably could, unless it's, 0 degrees outside.
I guess for Jeff's governance, do you need a motion by this board designating a member? What do you need?
Yes.
I thought you-
would require a member and a proposed alternate, so that we can include that in our bylaws.
That's sort of.
Okay, so we can make a motion to, to make the chair the member with 5 alternates and go from there, right?
At this moment in time, this is independent, so the FTA is kind of looking at this like a grace period. till
Yeah.
Designated recipients happen.
And I appreciate that. So I'm dealing with a variety of nuances. I'm glad FTA looks at it like that, but then there are people that Mallory's accountable to that her salary is associated with, that I want to be respectful of that relationship as well. So what we'll do is, if we can make a motion, I don't mind being the designee for BCATs, with an alternate being other board members as well, in my absence.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I'm looking at you, Tom. That was my motion. Look,
I know when you get appointed board, you need a name, so I just.
appreciate that. Are we, okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? We comfortable with that? I mean, you get where I'm coming from? We're still gonna do the same type of thing, but we'll go from there. All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Great. I have no idea how you all got me to sign up for something else. How did we get here? I'm gonna have to look at the AI and see what just happened. I talked myself right into that. It's because Jeff is here and he made it sound good, and what have you. So, okay, thank you. I'm sure it is. Okay, that moves us to in the new business. Did I miss anything? I know there was a nuance with legislative breakfast or something like that. Yeah, I got the new one. Okay. So, good. Yeah.
Bottom legislative update.
Yes, it's at the bottom under board and staff comments. So we'll move into new business. Hey, mailbox agreement and, signatory resolution, and then mailbox agreement, and general liability insurance requirement.
So at the last meeting, the January 14th, 2025 meeting, we approved the mailbox license agreement, but there have been some changes, which were the term commencement date starts February 1st now instead of January 1st. The rent is the same. The hold harmless paragraph, there's a requirement by Battle Creek Unlimited for the TAC to have general liability insurance, and for them to be listed as an additional insured. There were amounts in the previous version and they were removed for this version, and then an address was added under my name on the second page. So those were the only changes to it. The resolution that's new business A is to allow me as the acting treasurer to sign this approved agreement. And then the item B is the general liability insurance. We just yesterday received a quote for that. It's for $1 million of coverage for a year. This says the premium would be $844.38, but that includes Terrorism Risk Insurance Act of $25, which that's something that has to be declined, which we did decline for our directors and officers insurance. And then I found out they were going to add it at no charge. So we do have it there. And so I don't know if they will end up doing that in this case as well, adding it at no charge, because it was $25 then before they made it free. I don't know how that works, but that's what they did. So it would either be $844.38 if we kept it in at $25, or the premium would be $819.38 for the year. for the general liability insurance for TAC. That is a requirement of the,
Mailbox agreement.
yes.
So we could, it's my understanding, we could take the terrorism thing off that piece because we're
Yes.
covered in the DNO piece. So it seems like a duplicate. You know what I'm saying? And this insurance piece is almost an add-on, if you will, to the current policy that we have associated with DNO that may morph into an umbrella type thing later on for liability, what have you, and the organization. So kind of like the manual, we're kind of tacking things along as we go. And this became a thing where Battle Creek Unlimited, right, was a part of their agreement, which is them just making sure they cover their liability.
Right.
But our only interaction with Battle Creek Unlimited would be having a mailbox spot and us checking that mailbox and what have you.
And having that address. And we also are able to lease conference space there if needed or when needed.
So that's, those are two separate things, or
Yeah, so I,
giving you the authority to sign,
yes,
and then let's take care of that first. Is there a motion that we give the acting secretary to go ahead and engage in that mailbox agreement with the address and what have you?
So
It's been moved by Secretary Davis. Is there any support? Support. It's been supported by Vice Chair Tarkowitz. Any other discussion? Okay. Let it be known that I will abstain from that vote, being the chair of Battle Creek Unlimited. I don't want there to appear any conflict or special circumstance or what have you. I think they added to the bill because of that, but either way, it's not a matter of record. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Perfect. We'll go ahead and enter into that. So for the general liability thing, is there a motion to consider adopting that as a part of our insurance piece?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Watson. Is there any support? Support. Been moved and supported. Any other discussion? Great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Great. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Any other new business that wasn't indicated? That's why we leave C blank, I guess. Okay, let's move right back into public comments. Any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Jeff Franklin, Executive Director and Transportation Nerd of the Battle Creek Area Transportation Study.
Oh, it's been used in a sentence. That gives me, I can use it the rest of the day now.
So not technically agenda item, since that was about a representative appointment to BCATS. I wanted to, briefly mention why a member ought to care about BCATS. Not only is it a Federal Transit Administration requirement that you be listed as a member participating or otherwise to become a designated recipient of federal funds. The cost involved. So the federal mandate statutes over the years on authorization bills created the idea of MPOs, but the feds also fund the MPOs as well. They give us what's called a consolidated transportation planning grant per year. Consolidated meaning that FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, provides approximately 80% of the cost of an MPO, and the Federal Transit Administration provides approximately 20% of the cost of the MPO. Altogether is only 80% of what it's needed. We have to provide a 20% local match. We, among our members, divvy up that 20% local match. We do it based on the census population, which doesn't really apply to a transit agency the way that you would. So what we do is we figure out the 20% local match requirement on just the FTA portion that funds the MPO, and the urban transit agency pays for that particular component of it. If you were a participating member, if the TAC were a participating member in our current work program year, that bill would be about $10,400. Sounds like a lot of money. compared to the other members. City of Springfield pays less than that, but the City of Battle Creek and the Calhoun County Road Department pay significantly more than that. They're each on the hook for about $30,000. The City of Springfield's on the hook for about $4,000 based on that population. That $60,000 that we collect locally matches that 80% federal funded consolidated planning grant, gives BCATS a annual budget of around $350,000 total. What you get in return though is, so for your $10,500, per year, we create a short-term program that's 4 years in coverage. So over that 4 years, you'd be paying about $42,000 to be a member of BCATS to match our consolidated planning grant. But what you get, Mallory had touched on at your meeting 2 weeks ago, we return all of the other federal funds and grants that come available. So you help us fund our BCATS planning grant, and you're at the table to pick up all of the other resources that the federal government throws at us, which is significantly greater. That 22% that Mallory had touched on for over the course of our 4-year program of 2026 through 2029 comes out to $1.5 million that the TACC is on our program to receive over that 4-year period. And just so you know, that is FHWA funds. That is that $1.5 million. So within an MPO area, Federal Transit Administration funds, the big money comes, your designated recipient status comes and funds the urban transit agencies that exist within that planning area. You are a sole urban transit agency, or will be for our planning area. You're going to get all of the FTA funds that comes from that. FHWA has a bunch of funding programs and mechanisms that come to the planning area that get selected by our members. So when Mallory said that 22% over that 4-year period of 2026 through 2029 is coming to you based on the program that we just recently developed, and that's about $1.5 million, that's FHWA funds that we are taking in and we are flexing to the Federal Transit Administration. Money can flex back and forth between the various US DOT departments. We, as an MPO body, get automated, amounts of FHWA funds. We get automated amounts of FTA funds. Theoretically, the FHWA funds and programs could be spent on bridges and safety and non-motorized and road preservation, but they can also be flexed over to the Federal Transit Administration, pushed in that direction, and spent on the transportation system based on our members and our policy committees' decision-making prowess. And for that 4-year period of 2026 through 2029, $1.5 million of FHWA funds is going to be flexed to FTA. And that's the big reason. $42,000 cost, $1.5 million for that 4-year program. It's a big return on a small investment. And that's the planning process in effect. Essentially, our policy committee recognizes the importance of the transit system within the entire overall transportation planning system of the Battle Creek area and put it on paper.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a great sales presentation too for that. I'd already said I didn't want to pay anything, right? And then we came up here and justified that whole cost structure. He's like, look, this is what you get. No, I thank you for that. It really characterized the importance of us being at the table and the forward plan and what have you, and your role as the executive director is a great supporting partner. And I'm glad that you came and spoke those words today. Ms. Davis, make sure you hit your.
Regarding the 1.5 million, how do you determine how it's spent?
Our members propose projects for consideration among the it's our transportation improvement program. That's that 4-year short-term documents where we take actual expected funds and fiscally constrain them to selected projects within a 4-year time frame. It's a requirement. Our members take all of the individual members, bringing to the table what their actual selected projects are, city of Springfield will say, you know, Avenue A between Homer and 20th Street. And the city of Battle Creek will have several different things. Calhoun County brings forward their stuff. Transit brings forward their projects. And we essentially they decide amongst themselves. I just have to watch the forum take place and put a checkbox and tell the state and the feds that it took place successfully. But they decide how to best spend the various programs that these funds are attached to. In this particular case, this $1.5 million comes to us from FHWA in what's called a carbon reduction program or a congestion mitigation program. And in those particular cases, for road and bridge folks, spending those dollars, while possible, is not as easy as it is if we push them towards transit. Transit finds those dollars, those colored dollars, those pots, easier to spend than the road agencies do. So a lot of time that money is pushed towards transit as a, I don't know, an easy mechanism in which to treat transit as an important part of the system, as well as an ease for the members to utilize those funds.
Are you looking county-wide now?
We do not. The Battle Creek Area Transportation Study only looks in that, 6 township northwest corner area that includes the 2 cities. There are rural mechanisms that are handled by the Michigan Department of Transportation, as well as their Office of Passenger Transportation that would currently fund what, transit service or road money is spent within the city of Marshall and the city of Albion. It's a lot less as an urbanized area with more people. We're given larger pots of money to select projects for. But as a county-wide authority, there's no particular rule that says that you can't take urbanized funding, which was selected appropriately by the MPO for the use of the TACC, and then the TACC can spend that money wherever they feel like within their boundary.
So let me land the plane on how we get there, because I'm thinking I'm seeing a clear avenue in terms of how we get to. I understand your concern. We gonna get you off that stepchild thing because you still part of the family. You know what I'm saying. You got your days are numbered on using that as a thing. I'm telling you that right now. Having said that, the TAC comes to the table as representing based on both density and service providing, right? For the community, for the entire county. Before, you were based on density. I get how the density was right there in Battle Creek and what have you. And there's these outlying areas you're calling rural but if our overall plan is inclusiveness across the county in service delivery as well as density, that's a much different conversation than that kind of one lane conversation, no pun intended, that you had previously. So I'm excited to be at the table and kind of change that narrative and be a part of the membership that says we're shifting to look at this in this manner because the players have changed, the need has changed, and we have a different mission at Ride Calhoun than previously. Not that the previous state was poor. It's just different, right? Based on the voters and what have you. Ms. Avis,
So if I can add, don't go anywhere yet. So if I can add, BCATS is a metropolitan planning organization. The intent, although the money can be used elsewhere, the intent is for that metropolitan planning. Albion, Marshall, the outlying areas have separate pots of money that they have access to as well through small cities and rural task force, in which Marshall, is on the STIP to get, is it in 2027? 2027 to get a new vehicle through that source. Albion will now have that same opportunity. So there's a skilled director and finance person will figure out a way to have the TAC represented in all 3 of those areas. And I use the term braiding often, and braid together those funds where they can best be allocated. So there is a much larger pot, maybe not much larger for Battle Creek area, but there's a much larger pot in the MPO area that can fund more expensive purchases like bigger buses that are, $700,000, that pot of money can be used to replace some of that more urban, that cost allocation plan that I had broken out in the budget before. Whereas the rural task force money is enough to get a few vans that would serve the regional area. If that gives any clarification.
So if I heard right, I was gonna ask this question, you got to it before I asked it. The urban monies that Marshall gets, I'm gonna pick on Marshall first.
Mhm.
That we capture some for transit, because typically what we did is on a project, 1 year, the county road department would take the money, the next year, the city would take the money, and we just swap back and forth. I'm assuming that's what happens in Albion. But there was some money, as you mentioned, can go for transit, and TAC can capture that money.
Yep.
So likewise, TAC should be at the table when the Albion urban area gets together with the county road department, the city of Albion. Okay.
Yep, and so those next 4 years of projects were likely already selected. It doesn't mean that, everything is set in stone. Road construction projects change, costs change. And so the unique thing about transit versus road projects is that we have the year of obligation plus 3 years. So we essentially have 4 years to spend money that, FHWA and the road projects typically only have 1 year to spend. This means that we can use, let's say, Rural Task Force wants to give us 50,000 this year, 50,000 the next year, and $50,000 over the 4 years. We can pile all of that money together and wait until year 4 to spend it when we've accumulated enough. So we have a little bit more flexibility. And then at the end of the fiscal year, or getting near the end of the fiscal year, there's an opportunity to reallocate any cost savings. So let's say a road project had $10,000 left. Transit could use new computers. We'll take that $10,000 because $10,000 doesn't really get a road project done, right? They can't do anything with that. So we come to the table and we'll take any scrap that's left and we'll fight for any money that we can equally distribute. So Albion is not forgotten in this process. They just have their own process that the city of Battle Creek can't tap into.
Yeah, I know, we're gonna take care of Albion.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Havis, but I get the sensitivity, of Albion being kind of stuck on the fringes. But, I'm encouraged that this entire county will flourish as a result of both BCAT's, your engagement in the body of this board, across the table. I was at a function, last week, and somebody asked me about, I was at a table, and somebody confronted me about Albion. And I said, well, you got Ms. Davis, who makes sure that you are fully covered. But at the end of the day, we had a substantive conversation about how the strategy plays into where this is. And there's dollars associated with that strategy that are going to be intended for these different areas. And we're really talking about, I know you would use this concept of braiding, but in my former TIF life, this pass-through piece for the betterment of the plan and the strategy is going to be in play. So I think we're all speaking the same language, and I'm encouraged that, Marshall, Albion, Springfield, and even some outlying areas that are going to want to come into this fabulous strategy is going to be flourishing. So thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions? Great. It's a great conversation today. We will move on. Any other public comments? All right, great. Board and staff comments. Really, it's board comments, but staff, technical assistance folk, comment. Communications to the board. Who had that piece? Anything on that?
One email just came in today that I'll share.
Okay, all right. I'm
A and
sorry.
B are just, were added to the agenda as,
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. So, that's any outside traffic we get that we need to be made aware of or address that is outside our normal, vehicle, no pun intended, of communication. All right. Progress and updates. Okay, we're moving along with this policy piece and so on and so forth.
Maybe this is a good time for what I have. I guess this is to Peter. And maybe Mallory is, we've just started at the beginning of the procurement policy. I guess, don't tell me now, but I'd like to know in a list, what other policies and procedures heading towards October 1st are we going to have to adopt? When should we see those in the way of a calendar so that we're not pressured, or we have time to really look at documents? I was wondering if maybe next meeting or the meeting after, we could just have a list of who is going to do those procedures and policies that we have to adopt.
Are you asking me? This is Peter.
Yeah, did you? Yes, I was asking you or Mallory for a list of policies and procedures that we're going to have to adopt.
We will get together to formalize any of those policies that the board may have to adopt prior to October 1st.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we do it in a timely fashion, that we have time really to invest in looking at those and make sure we have them done and we're not rushing. So,
Understood. I will point out on the previous discussion that you had regarding the MPO, it feels to me like it's a positive relationship that the MPO has with BCATS and also with the TAC as it transitions. So I'm very optimistic about how that's moving forward, because I do think it's important that the MPO supports what you're doing and is clear about what you're intending. And the other thing is that, as Mallory explained to you, that the advantages as a transit system are quite important in belonging to the MPO. So I thought I'd just pass that advice to you.
one other thing, not really, I'm not sure where it relates to. Should we as TAC be looking at joining our local Chamber of Commerce? I know Albion has one.
Yeah, that is something that it could be. You have to decide on, what are the primary intentions of the Chamber of Commerce. I can tell you in Grand Rapids, we did, and I ended up as a public servant, essentially chair of the Grand Rapids Area Chamber of Commerce for 2 years. So that was a positive. That was very positive in the sense that the business community in Grand Rapids area supported what the transit agency was doing. So you'd have to use that framework to look at it. But I from my past experience, it's always positive to be engaged with the business community.
So I was just, is that something we should be looking at here in the future? I know here in Marshall, the city's a member, the county's a member, the school board, and so I'm just wondering, is that something you feel in your other communities would be beneficial? No, the Albion or the Battle Creek.
We would definitely welcome it. Billy Beers is, who I guess came from Battle Creek at one time.
Oh, that's where Billy is. Oh, okay, yeah.
There.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he would definitely welcome that, and I think it would be good visibility as well.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we go back to our respective municipalities, chambers of commerce, and bring back to this body what the benefits would be. Kind of like what Jeff did with BCAT today. What the benefits would be for us going forward, and we'll take a look at that and look at adopting that, because we don't know what the cost is yet, and so on and so forth. So we want to analyze those things. It's a very good observation.
I'm a personal member of the chamber here after I retired, but on the way out the front door, I will veer to the right and I will get the information for the next.
Yeah, you
meeting.
spend a lot of time in that office. You might as well run for public office again, sir.
No elected offices, no, sorry.
I
Somehow.
am too, so I think it'll be, I can bring that up.
Yeah, I just need the benefit information and the cost, the annual cost, and then the obligation piece. It's a good, it's a good tool for communication. I know that the Battle Creek Chamber, we spoke at that, both Mallory and myself, and that was a good use of our time, getting communication across and what have you. So, there's other benefits that chambers provide. I just want to make sure we're clear about the cost and making sure we get said benefits. Okay,
So that's not a problem.
okay.
That won't be a deterrent.
Yeah, no, I wasn't insinuating that.
Springfield have a chamber?
We don't, we are a member of the Battle Creek Chamber. The city is.
Perfect.
You're an enclave.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, Springfield is an important part of the community. If they put up toll roads there, it'd be a real hindrance to get from one area of the Battle
Right.
Creek to the other. So we want to be nice to these Springfield folks. Anything else? Okay, perfect. Legislative update?
So just a quick update. Obviously, there's been some executive orders that we're keeping our eye on. We are working with APTA, MPTA, and CTAA, which are state and national organizations or associations, to sort through those executive orders and how they impact our grants. There's been a freeze on all government federal grant reimbursements. At this time, we don't believe they impact our transit formula grants. So those grants would be our 5307 operating and our 5339 capital. Right now, it appears to be grants that are focused on DEI, opportunity zones, electric vehicle requirements. But there's also been a pause or a freeze on NOFOs, Notice of Funding Opportunities. So I talked about some of the grants last time that we were applying for. And so some of those grants are due this week, and the requirements for those grant applications changed as of yesterday. So we're kind of trying to sort through what all of that means and how it's impacting us. In the meantime, we did get a partial year apportionment. So at this time, FTA is releasing a prorated amount of operating assistance that reflects the same funding level as last year, 2024. And so we only have access to the prorated portion of that. So we talked last time about why the TAC levied the millage before operating, and this is a perfect example of why. We're, again, 5 months into the fiscal year and we don't have our federal funds yet. And at this time, they haven't even released all of them. They've only released that prorated amount. So I will keep you guys updated on how that could impact the TAC or any of the tax funding. So our goal is to get that 1.5 million obligated as soon as possible before anything gets clawed back. Are there any questions?
No, I appreciate you stating that fact at the last meeting and reiterating that today. I was hoping that there would be a live example a month later, but here we are. So please keep us up to date because that's very fresh information and what have you. We don't know what direction that's going to go, but that's why you build a strategy so that you can modify the strategy as you go based on the landscape as it changes. So nothing's going to stay the same. But I am a firm believer that regardless of what executive orders happen or what pieces happen, the why we're doing this doesn't change. And there's a box for that somewhere. And so we just have to be attentive and less complaint oriented and more progressive strategy thinking oriented to be able to fit in that box. Does that make sense? I even see the BCATS dude nodding his head, so that's good. Okay, thank you. Great update.
Ms. Davis had asked about the legislative breakfast. I did send you an invite for that date. I think it was March 12th. I sent you a calendar invite. It is in Lansing. And I will send more details as they're available and we get closer to the date. But it's a good opportunity to sit down and have breakfast, lunch, cocktails, whatever it may be during that day with our local elected officials. So
I mentioned it to Gary Tompkins also, so, yeah, I think I'll be there.
Great, thank you. All right. Any other board comments?
Oh, the only other board comment, I gave a brief update at a council meeting last week regarding TACC, and I consulted Mallory to get talking points. So we just did talking points, but what I would like to do, you know, in my community is, you know, periodically, maybe every month and a half or so, to just talk about some of the things that we're covering and some of the decisions that are being made without going into detail, but to keep it in front of the citizens so they will know that they are included in every decision that is made.
Okay. And part of what we wanted to do with our communication efforts, that includes marketing and what have you, is to get back on that trail and create a consistent trail of communication in those communities. So that's gonna be a thing.
We can do a feature story, you know, on down the line, you know, periodically as well.
Yeah. When are those buses coming in?
we meet with a vendor today, this afternoon, to get the order completed for 4. Those are 4 of the paratransit buses. 3 more of the big fixed route buses will be here later in the year, so likely after October 1st. We expect build dates probably sometime in August or September, and then they get driven from California out here. And then the 4 minivans should be, I would say, by April.
Okay.
April 25.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And all of that ties into kind of that planning committee that I'll find a better name for, but getting the letters of intent and agreements in place for the branding and operation of those.
Yep. And that's the TACC Municipality Planning Committee.
Good.
Better name for it, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, any other comments for the good of the board? Okay, hearing none, our next meeting is February 11th, 2025, and I'll move adjournment. Is there any support for that? Okay.
11th, I won't be here. Okay.
You will not be here?
No, I will be in DC.
Can you sign?